Welcome to Season 3 of the Animal Highlight, which has been extracted from Season 5 of the Animal Turn podcast that is focused on animals and biosecurity. As you know, in the Animal Highlight, we give relatively short episodes that provide insights and stories into the lives of animals. And this season is looking at animals and biosecurity. On the Animal Turn, we focused on concepts as wide-ranging as keeping life safe, what biosecurity means, and how it's related to things such as health, politics, and ethics. But in this podcast, we're focused on the animals that are kind of caught up in these biosecurity dramas. And I'm joined this season with a co-host, and that's Amanda Bunten-Walberg, who at the time of recording was a PhD candidate at Queen's University's School of Environmental Studies. Her research explored more than human ethics in contagious contexts through the case study of bats and COVID-19. Mandy is particularly interested in how more than human ethics, critical race theory, queer theory, and biopolitical theory might guide humans towards developing more ethical relationships with animals, particularly those who are understood as diseased. I had a great time talking to Amanda throughout the season. I learned so much from her. And I'm also extremely thankful to the sponsors of the season, Animals and Philosophy, Politics, Law and Ethics, A.P.P.L.E, as well as the Biosecurities and Urban Governance Collective, sponsored this season of the Animal Turn podcast, where this content has been taken from. In this episode, we're focused on flying foxes. Hi, Mandy. Welcome back to the Animal Highlight. I believe you've got another animal in store for us today. Who are we going to be talking about?
Yeah, this week I'm especially excited because we're talking about bats. And I'm doing my doctoral research on bats, and I just really love them.
Oh man, I'm excited to hear this. I had such a good conversation in the last season about bats, and I just had no idea how diverse they are and how they're everywhere and the scale and size of them. So I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to say.
Absolutely. And I'll offer a brief recap in a minute of some of that diversity before honing in on some more specific bat experiences. So yeah, this week I wanted to do bats because their lives are deeply implicated in bioethics. And I'm sure we're all aware right now that bats have been widely blamed for COVID-19. And because of this, they're facing escalating persecution. But in addition to this, many bat species have been pushed to the brink of extinction due to things like the anthropogenic spread of white nose syndrome, deadly climate change-induced heat waves, large-scale habitat destruction. So I really just want to give bats some attention today. Now, in making this highlight, I really drew primarily from the posthumously posted book Shimmer, Flying Fox Exuberance in World's A.P.P.L.E. by Deborah Bird Rose, and I can't gush enough about this book. I really recommend it. I also drew from the wonderful book Bat by Tessa Liard. So as a bit of a recap from last season, bats are incredibly diverse. They're part of the second most diverse order of mammalia on the planet, and they can range in size anywhere from human-length wingspans to as teeny as bumblebees. I know, right? And they can be divided into the suborders of microbats and megabats. Microbats are primarily small insect eaters who will use echolocation to navigate, while megabats, who are also called flying foxes, are large fruit eaters who don't echolocate, with a few exceptions. And today, I want to hone in a little bit more to focus on Australian flying foxes. I'm obsessed with them, and something I'm particularly fascinated by is their intensely social lives. Female flying foxes actually only give birth, as a general rule, to one baby a year, and they have a really close bond with their baby, which is perhaps most evident in the fact that mothers will actually carry their young everywhere for the first several weeks of their life, even when they're flying out at night to forage for food. Though eventually, these babies are left in a communal nursery while the mothers go on search for food. And then at around 3 months, they're getting ready to be a bit more independent. And they actually go out, supervised by adult males, in foraging groups where they learn how to fly, find food, navigate. And the bat researchers Hall and Richards describe these adolescent foraging excursions in really relatable detail. So I want to share a quote with you all. They do not have the purpose or direction of adults and are reminiscent of a group of school kids going home from school and exploring the environment. Progress is slow as they carry out aerial bombs on each other, explore vegetation, and duck from imaginary predators. End quote. Just totally delightful and very relatable. You can imagine a group of human children doing this exact same thing, minus the flight.
Totally. Yeah, but I mean, just playing around, fighting with a stick against a non-existent enemy. I mean, we've all done that in play, yeah.
And how play and learning are so intertwined.
Completely.
But it's really not just babies and juveniles who are this social. Flying fox adults prefer to live in large camps. This is where they literally hang out together all day before they leave to forage at night. And they have at least 30 different vocal calls, all of which are audible to humans. And Deborah Bird Rose notes that from a human point of view, they are very noisy folk. So not only do flying foxes have deep relationships with each other, but they're also part of these magnificently long-standing and intimate relationships with their environments and Australian Indigenous communities. In particular, flying foxes have a mutualistic relationship with trees and shrubs in the Myrtaceae family, which is what they eat. And many of these plants produce pollen and nectar at night and are most receptive to pollination at night, which is exactly when flying foxes feed. And incredibly, flying foxes have tongues that are adapted species by species to the specific Myrtaceous plant on which they depend. They also do really important and crucial long-range pollination and seed dispersal work that the Myrtaceous trees really benefit from. So the Indigenous Yarralin and Lungara communities, who Deborah Bird Rose lived and worked really closely with, they have intimate matrilineal kin relationships with flying foxes. And so they understand flying foxes to be relations, family, and persons. And these communities also understand that flying foxes are intimately connected with rain. Australia is marked by these starkly contrasting dry and wet seasons, and the Yarlin and Lungara people know that flying foxes call to the spiritual figure, the rainbow snake, who drives rains, and they call to the rainbow snake to bring an end to the dry season and to bring the rain. But there's also just an element of, I want to say, pleasure in the relationship between flying foxes and water. And I want to share a passage from Deborah Bird Rose's book that captures that. And in this passage, the flying fox expert Kim Pearson is describing watching flying foxes doing what he calls belly dips at a lagoon at Sydney's Royal Botanic Garden. And quote, they skim over the water, get the water on their belly, and then they fly up to a tree and lick the water off and have a bit of a wash in it. Occasionally, you'll see some belly dipping over the other side in the salt water, and we think it's because they need a bit of salt. You can tell the ones that are older because they really know what they're doing. They approach beautifully, flap in, and just glide with enough speed, do it perfectly, and fly off. Some of them have a few goes at it, but they don't quite have the courage to commit. We've occasionally seen very young ones miscalculate and totally faceplant. One very hot day, we saw one juvenile come in, misjudge, and woof, his little head popped up and he swam ashore and then climbed ashore very wet and obviously a lot cooler, end quote. I really love this passage because I think it captures not only how astonishing bats are, but also how relatably clumsy they are and how relatably, I guess, pleasure-seeking they are in the same ways that we are, or similar ways that we humans are. So that brings me to the end of this highlight, although I could talk about bats forever. But I hope that by giving you a peek at some of the wonderful stories and work of Deborah Bird Rose that have inspired people to care and want to learn more about these creatures.
Awesome. Thank you. No, I really do love how you highlight some of these kind of stories about their lives and just some of the more like intimate goings on, right? Sometimes when we speak about a species, we speak at this kind of species level and we think about what we owe to a specific species or animal type, even, like mammals or birds, but then, for those foxes that are getting the belly rub or getting their belly wet or face planting, that's also an individual experience and an experience in a community. And yeah, those stories really just, they make it makes you smile. You can't help but delight in the fact that there's a flying fox somewhere that's face planting in water just because they haven't quite got it right. That's really cool. Well, thank you so much for sharing with us today. And yeah, we'll chat more next time.
Oh, of course. Thank you.
Thank you to Animals in Philosophy, Politics, Law and Ethics, A.P.P.L.E, as well as the Biosecurities and Urban Governance Research Collective for sponsoring Season 5 of the Animal Turn podcast, where this content was extracted from. Thank you also goes to Amanda Bunten-Walberg for being an incredible co-host, and to Rebecca Shen for doing and designing the episode and podcast artwork. This episode was edited by Christiaan Mentz and produced by myself. Just a reminder to please rate and review this podcast wherever you listen. This is The Animal Highlight with me, Claudia Hirtenfelder.